Good evening. My name is Alexander Hagan, and I'm the CEO of a medium-sized small tech company in Silicon Valley. Okay, so we're going to be looking at SB 1867, and 1867 is a initiative or a parliamentary maneuver to allow Americans to be detained indefinitely for suspicions of association, sponsored by Carl Levin and John McCain. Now, I ask you, what is treason and what is a traitor? Treason and traitors have to do with subverting the Constitution of the United States and its Bill of Rights. And only one man was ever stripped of his citizenship. That is a famous story, which is a man who was sent around on a ship, never to be even allowed to see a map of the U.S., in A Man Without a Country, who was something to do with, I'm sure, Aaron Burr and his plans to invade Mexico. Now, these fellows, more than anyone else, should suffer this fate of having their citizenship stripped if they are trying to carelessly give away rights that we sacrificed from when we first left our countries in 1620 under civil and religious pressure and struck out. We have exerted and demanded various rights, which came in fullest force in the Revolution, but then again in the Civil War and other forms of adding amendments to the Bills of Rights, so that we had the Equal Rights Amendment in the 60s. All of this is under threat here because you can be detained. Look at here. It issues Section 1031 of the National Defense Bill, which would authorize the use of military force against any individual who substantially support al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces that are engaged in hostility against the United States or its coalition partners, including any person who has committed a belligerent act. What is a belligerent act? Or has directly supported such hostilities in aid of such enemy forces? What would that mean? And who are these enemy forces? This is basically saying that I cannot disagree with my government. It's basically saying, because if I disagree with my government on an issue that could come down to who the bad guys and who the good guys are, I can be rounded up for liking what they consider to be the bad guys. That is, that I have an unpopular point of view, and I can be put in indefinite detention. So this actually is an attack on our freedom of speech and our freedom of assembly and our freedom of association, even more so than our habeas corpus and our right to a speedy trial by a jury of our peers, and that we are presumed innocent unless proven guilty. All this is at stake here. So what sort of scoundrels would possibly do this to their own country? That is my question. And let's get back here to where we're at now. So I need to adjust things. Okay, so let's do a risk-reward analysis of this whole idea of the war on terror, first of all. So I guess I would like to just show you my page on this briefly. So what does it cost to security? What is it that's going to be so terrible that's going to happen to us that we don't give up all the rights we've accumulated over 350 years since we came, 342 years since we came here, basically. So, and then what is going on with the growing U.S. disregard for American constitutional individual liberty and due process through charges without trial, including we've assassinated an American citizen who was the son of one of these purported al-Qaeda heads, but he was born in Denver, Colorado. He's the guy who was over in Yemen inciting the Fort Hood shooter, supposedly. This is his kid and his kid's cousin, 17 and 16, blown away, blown to bits by an American drone. Why are we allowing this to happen? What is the risk, and what are we spending on this enterprise of an eternal war that allows us to be indefinitely detained on suspicions of association until the end of all hostilities in a war that's been said to last forever? To declare America as a permanent battlefield. It just blows your mind. But what blows your mind more is when you read all the people signed up for it. So this is an example of doing an analysis of, first of all, mortality mash board. These are, I believe, actually cancer and malignant neoplasms are the same thing. I was wondering why cancer I was having trouble correlating everything on these tables, but that's what it is. So we have 2,436,000 deaths in America that are preventable. And in the case of terrorism, I posit that if we had normal security expenditures for a normal industrialized nation, which would be about a third of our present percentage of our economy. So in terms of our present economy, let's look at what we're spending for things. This is our public sector right here. All this blue stuff is related to empire. This light blue in the bottom corner is public healthcare spending. Both of them gross consumers of all that we have. All other public spending combined is only 21%. So you add that with K-12 education and a reasonable amount for public health care, and you'd be looking at something like 47% of the money would be being spent properly. But as it is, in a sense, you could say that around 50% of it is drained off for unproductive activities to protect us against criminals and to protect us against terrorists. So it's a vast sum of money. It's quite staggering. It comes out to 1.7 trillion a year, which is 38.2% of all of our public expenditures in the whole of the U.S. And then we have a horrible cost of health care, both in the private sector, and this comes to a total of 2.4 trillion. So in terms of our overall economy, if you take health care and the military-industrial complex, and you put them over our whole economy, equals that over 14 trillion 300, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 28.9% of all the money we spend in this country is on soldiers and doctors, where the correct number would be more like 16%, a little bit less than 1/2 in terms of economic output. Yes, that's right. So at any rate, now let's look at the costs involved here. So let's see if I can get to this. Okay, so here are different causes of illness, as I said, in the United States, and death. So these various diseases up here: accidents, 123,000 people die; hospital errors, 195,000 people die; Alzheimer's, assault, homicide, 16,000; suicide, 37,000. These are the various ways people die. And now, moving right along here, I anticipate that if we lowered our security to a normal amount, we would incur, actuarially, 6,375 new deaths a year from terrorism. If you average all of these very unlikely events, so 5,000 deaths at 5% a year, it means once every 20 years. 1 million deaths once every 200 years. The chance of a nuclear attack on an American city. 25% chance of a smaller event, such as a massive airliner attack. So if we allowed that, that would be 6,375 deaths we're preventing every year through heightened military expenditures. That's $109 million per preventable death. So that means you're paying $109 million to save one person from death from terrorist attack. And you're doing a lot of it. You're doing more of that than probably all the other prevention of all other illnesses and accidents in the U.S. Okay, $109 million per person. Now, I use various figures here to look at preventable illnesses. This is worldwide preventable, but it correlates fairly well to the U.S. except malnutrition. We have high cholesterol, smoking, hypertension, STDs, poor diet, obesity, physical inactivity, alcohol. All of these are certainly problems in the U.S. So the targeted population based on worldwide here is a total of, I think, 2,166,000 preventable deaths a year in theory, which seems kind of high, but we put in target populations here. So let's make the populations even smaller, okay? We'll go down to a 33% reduction. Then what we have is the cost of treatment. So I put 50,000 here, 10,000 there, various costs of treatment to get people off, like alcohol. Let's go with 50,000 to get somebody completely off of alcohol permanently in 1 year, or to fund money towards alcohol treatment to eliminate one alcoholic lifestyle. So at any rate, here's our various figures to save a life. Between 75,000, 22,000 at the low end, you posited a $10,000 outlay in non-smoking programs such as a inpatient program, for example, combined with pharmacological aids, to a high of 100,000 in saving a life in the area of alcoholism because of perhaps a low effectiveness rating. Could be even say to be lower than that. Let's say it was 40%. So it is still, you would have 2,200 people that you could save the lives of for every one person you're saving the life of through this horrible tyranny. So to end the note of this horrible tyranny that we're auctioning off our rights carelessly and in a blasé fashion, clamoring to give away our rights to be made safe from an event that is incredibly unlikely. And even when you factor in a nuclear attack killing 1 million people once every 200 years, and then pay for it every year at 5,000 people a year actuarially. Look at that compared to these numbers for all of these preventable issues. Now that's from the global issue. Now the U.S. tobacco and high blood pressure were the #1 listed. And let's see if I can find you a little bit. Here we go. Methods and findings. This was about preventable illness in the U.S. Okay. Now what do we got here? Then we've got obesity, 216, 188, physical inactivity, 1 in 10 deaths. High dietary salt, low fatty acids, and high dietary trans fatty acids were the dietary risk of the largest mortality effects. 26,000 died from heart disease and were averted by current alcohol use. They were outweighed by 90,000 deaths from other cardiovascular, cancer, cirrhosis, alcohol use disorders, road traffic, and other injuries and violence. So there's many things you could do to reduce your chance of mortality that would be approximately 2,000 times more effective than flushing it down the military security state rat hole, which also removes the very reason that you're an American to begin with, your individual liberties, your right to be presumed innocent. And so let me finally conclude on saying, here is what we need. What we need in a libertarian approach to healthful living. To live healthy, we must live free. We must not be alienated. We must develop a way for every man, woman, child to have very good and reasonable prospects of having secure access for life to clean food and clean air and clean soil and clean water, to have a connection with their local agriculture, to have housing without fear of being turned out of one's housing, have medical access to medical care, and a reasonable social contract of what time you would put into a medical co-op if you were using trade instead of cash. The same for education, a PhD, clothing, basic tools and furniture, and co-op facilities. What I'm suggesting is we move more towards co-op models such as the Plymouth Bay Colony or Oneida or Amana, or other communities where people went into contracts to do more than just live together, but to make things together and to mutually support each other. And these were wildly successful when done correctly. Amana and Oneida, will you be a millionaire now from these places? It started as a silverware, selling company, and then Amana eventually ended up doing radar ranges. So you could get all of this for about a quarter time commitment. And these things currently would cost an American around $30,000 a year, and our cost of furnishment is about $8,000. And if you do this, then you eliminate all taxes, mortgage, and indebtedness. So you have no need to work. You can have zero employment, and everybody can do just fine, because this is part of a cooperative structure. The requirement is that we be able to drive this sucker on 1/4 time exchange labor or equivalent in cash payments per utilizer. And this would still allow people to have 75% time to drive in the normal, speculative, optional economy. You see, this is a mandatory utility economy. If this is a modern-day yeoman freeholder, he must have access to these things without fear of alienation throughout his life, that he should not have to pay one dime to function in this area if he's willing to contribute 1/4 time. Thank you, good night, and good luck.